What's up, y'all? I'm so excited for you to listen to this week's episode. It features a mentor and an inspiration of mine from the Green Leadership Trust. You're going to learn about things around the gaps of funding when it comes to climate justice and just in general how inaccessible philanthropic funding is when it comes to climate change, as well as how difficult it is for those funds to reach frontline communities on the ground. So we dive deep in this episode talking about some of those issues and gaps and how the Green Leadership Trust is working to bridge those gaps and try to bring more Black, Indigenous, and people of color into the fold when it comes to philanthropic funding, leadership, and resource allocation. So let's get into it. Well, thank you so much for joining me today on Climate Week, New York City. We are here currently in New York City. Currently thinking about the present and past and future of the climate movement, where it's going and where we feel it needs to head. And something I've been thinking a lot about is intergenerational conversations and the importance of being able to bridge gaps on information and community in ways that our movement desperately needs right now. And as, you know, a young woman of color in the environmental field, I feel like I'm now at a place where I'm being put in positions as a leader in this space to where I know that there's gaps in my knowledge and wanting to learn from folks that have had so much wisdom and knowledge in this space. That's exactly why I wanted to bring you onto my show today, and I'm so excited to introduce you to my community online. And so I would love if you could take a moment and introduce yourself to everyone.
I am Emira Woods. I am the relatively new executive director of the Green Leadership Trust. The Green Leadership Trust is this phenomenal network, Black, Brown, Indigenous, AAPI. We are the only cross-cultural network of board members. We are fiduciaries. We are on the boards of environmental organizations. And it's everything from the big greens, you know, the Sierra Clubs and Nature Conservancy, and the list is so long. But it's also the climate justice organizations and the climate finance groups. And we're increasingly looking at other spaces like the corporate world and trying to figure out how to keep them accountable, right? As well as thinking down the road about global, right? Like Green Leadership Trust started a handful of people about 9 years ago on those big green boards, coming together saying, okay, we need to have collective strength, collective power. And it's grown from that handful of people to now over 150 strong on over 80 boards. It's amazing, but we're on this trajectory of growth. So we are looking to not only expand our membership, but expand our power and our impact. And we're especially looking, I love when you talk about intergenerational, because we believe that the future of the climate movement, the today, the now of the climate movement is powerful, dynamic, young leaders of color like yourself. And so you are like our, key, however we call it, growth trajectory of the Green Leadership Trust. We have what we call a board talent roster for people who are not yet on boards, who want to be. We also have an incredible program. It's called the Vanguard Leadership, but it was named after an amazing leader from right here in New York, Cecil Corbin Marks, who was with We Act here in New York, one of the leading environmental justice organizations in the world, really. And so when he passed away recently, we were honored to name the program after him. So the Cecil Corbin Marks Vanguard Leadership Program is really an onboarding orientation for young leaders who are new to boards. How to be an effective board member, how to use your power, your strength, your voice, how to shape the organization so that they're actually meeting the needs of our communities, right? So there's an incredible program, and it's an honor to be there and to be a part of this movement.
Wow.
And I could talk forever about our members. We mentioned We Act here in New York, Peggy Shepard, one of I think of her as like our queen mother.
She's amazing.
Been at this for an incredibly long time, and one of the visionaries who started Green Leadership Trust 9 years ago. Michael Galopter, one of he visioned Green Leadership Trust, works in the Bay Area as well as in New York on all kinds of issues of tech and greening the future, and we have young visionaries. I'm thinking of Justin Donovan. Justin is a professor at UCLA. He's also a black scuba diver.
What?
And he started the Black Archaeologists Association, bringing together all these incredible minds. They're diving on ships that were, part of the Atlantic slave trade.
Wow.
Visioning like new ventures or following Marcus Garvey's path. And following, again, using archaeology to kind of tell our stories. Our stories have been sort of written in the margins or ignored in history. And here you have incredible leaders that are lifting up those stories, because it's a part of lifting up who we are. We have always, as a people, been rooted in nature, been rooted in the outdoors. And we're claiming that space, right? We are saying this is us. We also have visionary leaders that are doing everything from urban gardens to farming, agroecology, feeding our communities, and understanding that link between health and the environment, and a way of kind of learning from the past to help bridge for the future. So I could talk an hour.
This is amazing.
About our members, who they are, and all that they do. But I think what they represent is an incredible assortment of leaders who understand that you need, Black, brown, indigenous people. We are 70% of the world's population. We must be reflected on boards of directors that are having such influence. Every space, every organization, for that organization to be effective, has to reflect not only our voice, our vision, but our solutions, right? So there's all kinds of ways that we can share in terms of an intergenerational space, who we are and what we do. But we're so grateful to kind of work on you joining us. We're still working on that.
Yes. No, thank you so much. I mean, that was really powerful, and I think everything that you all have built is laying the groundwork for those of us that, maybe are new to this space. And I know for myself, when I was first starting out and learning about environmental justice and the lack of representation of BIPOC in this space, the numbers are astounding. You look at the Green 2.0 report, and, it's showing statistically that we're not in these boardrooms, we're not running these philanthropies, we're not running these organizations that are supposed to be quote unquote changing the world, but changing the world for whom? And serving whom,
Exactly.
And I think it's an interesting question of, it's not just about the need for representation, it's resources, it's survival, it's just so much deeper than just, surface level vanity metrics. It's actual people's lives and material circumstances. And I think people don't always necessarily think of it that way.
Absolutely.
So I would love if you could talk a little bit more about that. Like, why do we need more representation of people of color on boards in these organizations? Why is that important?
I believe that the environmental movement cannot achieve its goals without us. And it's part of it is nothing about us without us. That's key, right? But it's also, we have the solutions. If you think just this week, again, it's Climate Week. There's so much going on, and there's so many issues to lift up. But for us, we started this week, the Green Leadership Trust had a retreat here in New York. One of our members wasn't with us in person. She joined virtually from Puerto Rico, Ruth Santiago, in the midst of the hurricane. Literally, she's on the phone trying to join us as the hurricane is coming. We are, and Ruth Santiago has been at the forefront of saying we need community-based, community-scale renewable energy, solar rooftops, right? She is at the forefront of saying community-driven initiatives work. They're the proven solutions. And so, not only has she led the struggle there in Puerto Rico, but together with Green Leadership Trust, we had letters going to the White House and to Congress around the importance of resourcing Puerto Rico. Of course, sovereignty for Puerto Rico, that too, right? You're looking at issues of democracy and rights and who makes decisions. All of those are woven into these conversations about the planet and its future, right? So when we say, we need to be in these spaces, it's to ensure that the goals of the movement are actually achieved, right? Because quite frankly, it's been, all white men, right? Mostly old white men, and it failed.
Yes.
We've got to say that. We've got to be really squarely, hit it and say it's failed.
Yeah.
And we cannot continue status quo, business as usual. I mean, we know this is the decisive decade. We have less than a decade, right? In order to push the planet to below 1.5 degrees Celsius in terms of global warming. Otherwise, we see already the flooding in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, right? I'm from Liberia, and we know already there are communities already now underwater. Clearly we see from Katrina and all of the 17 years ago, but all of the the disasters since then in places like New Orleans. It is our communities that are at the forefront. They're paying the heaviest price of the climate chaos, right? And so it must be our communities that are at the forefront of saying, oh no, we're not going to take this anymore. We know what the solutions are, and we demand the right to be able to be able to have resources flowing to those solutions that actually work, that can actually not only protect the planet, but also be a part of making sure that our communities, our frontline communities, not only survive but thrive now and for generations to come.
I love everything you had to say about that. I think it's interesting when it comes to even talking about concepts of climate finance. During Climate Week, New York City, that's the biggest thing that I've been seeing, come up is, where's the money going to go for climate solutions? Where's the money going to go? And it's usually for solutions like sucking carbon out of the atmosphere and turning into cement or clothing or the soles on some Nike sneakers. I don't know. Anyways, I see all these solutions all about carbon, very carbon centric, which sure, there is a place for all of that. But I'm where are the indigenous-led solutions? Where are the community-led solutions? Where's the funding going directly to these communities who don't have sovereignty, who don't have access to capital or resources? There's not enough conversation around that. The wealth inequality piece is not addressed enough. It's just, these are the technologies, and it's going to be led by X, Y, and Z company or X, Y, and Z CEO, but you don't really see those people necessarily come from those communities. And so when we're thinking about leadership in this movement and green leadership in this movement, we have to think about where's the representation of knowing that the money and the resources that are being allocated for these really big initiatives to address quote-unquote climate justice are actually going contextually to the communities that need it most to actually make that strategic. And I don't think enough people really think about that. They're just oh yeah, we're going to throw a bunch of money and plant some trees, suck some carbon out of the atmosphere, and we're going to be fine. But it's that's not going to ultimately be able to quote-unquote build more resilient communities, because you're not addressing the historic disinvestment and lack of sovereignty that those communities have had for time immemorial at this point.
Absolutely right, Christy. So what we see is that there's because of the capitalist economic system that we're in, you have corporations that have way too much power. So if you look at even this Inflation Reduction Act, which, this climate bill, historic climate bill for the U.S., and we could probably talk an hour about that alone, right? But at the bottom line, what we see is corporate power that's stripping away democracy, stripping away the opportunity for people to kind of dream a future that will work for our communities, right? So we've got to know that it is these very the corporate players, right? The fossil fuel driven corporations that have created the chaos in the world, right? That our communities are now suffering the repercussions of, right? So whether it's, Cancer Alley, it is some say 500 years, but at least 200 years of an industrial economy that has pushed resources into fewer and fewer hands, and they've been typically white and male, right? So again, what we see is the core of democracy is people choosing their leaders freely, holding those leaders accountable. But if you have corporations essentially stripping out the opportunity for people to choose their leaders, I mean, all the issues we can talk about, campaign finance reform, there's a lot that's linked to this, right?
Yeah.
But corporate power run amok has been the problem. And it is these fossil fuel driven companies that you see literally writing legislation. Right? And so, even when there's opportunity to have a climate bill that meets the needs of, frontline communities, you often see these offsets, you see these side deals,
So
you
true.
see, the resources flowing in ways that continue to prop up the corporate players that are, the corporations that are still steeped in a fossil fuel driven future. So we've got to call it as that's the problem. That's taking away opportunity for people to actually determine their lives and the lives of their children and for generations to come will continue on a path that destroys not only our lives but the planet. So we've got to shake that up to say, no, we cannot have democracy taken away from us before our eyes, right? In a context of quite frankly a white supremacist kind of economy and world. So we've got to begin to say no to all of that, to revision a future that learns from a past that uses agroecology, that thinks about farming in ways that feed our families and our community in healthy ways, that don't have us dependent on pesticides or fertilizers that are, again, fossil fuel heavy, fossil fuel laden, that we've got to begin to reclaim, right? Some of the lessons of our foremothers and forefathers, right? Like this is how people survived, for centuries. And so we hold up our indigenous brothers and sisters that are fighting for sovereignty, not only here in the United States but around the world. Indigenous people who have been sort of at the forefront of saying we've got to learn to build healthy lives, center spirituality, center well-being, right? Wholeness as a people, and think about things in a way that builds a communal vibe, a communal spirit.
This episode of Brown Girl Green is sponsored by Bed Stew. Bed Stew is an incredible, sustainable company that makes ethically handcrafted shoes and accessories that is focused on high-quality materials, water-based glues, plant-based dyes, and natural tannins. And they are focused on also making sure that their workers are treated well and that they leave a positive impact on the planet. Thank you so much, Bed Stew, for your time, and make sure that you check them out for all of your future shoe and accessory needs.
Lifts us up.
No, I love that so much. And I mean, I just want to emphasize it is so important that we don't settle for less, especially when it comes to the sanctity and survival of our communities. And it's an interesting thing because I had this very weird parasocial experience of getting invited to go to the White House and learn about the IRA and having that experience. And it's so crazy that was literally last week. I'm like, where's my life? And it's just so weird because I'm in this position where I'm allowed, due to the platform I've built and the space I've built, to be allowed to be in these spaces, in these rooms, and knowing that at the end of the day we need that, but it's also not enough. And that at the end of the day, we need BIPOC community leaders and resources. And until that gets redistributed and until people in power with racial and economic and social power choose to really redistribute that and be accountable to that process, it's difficult to know where that accountability is going to lay. And, getting to be with the Green Leadership Trust on Sunday, I was able to do this amazing social media training with you all and talking about this new...
We loved it. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much. This new paradigm of information and platforms now to actually emphasize environmental justice. And I'm so grateful that, like, I now have this space where I get to interview folks like yourself and others and be able to uplift those stories. But at the same time, you know, it's can be frustrating because you're like, I'm putting in all this effort as a woman of color, having to push through all these narratives when there's these institutions that have so much money and funding and resources, and it's like they should be redistributing that as well. And so I think it's amazing that you all have built programming that's actually institutionalizing that and really going in and addressing, hey, you are the organizations that have the wealth and the resources. We have the data to back up to show that you need to shift if you're going to actually make transformational changes in this space, because at the end of the day, it comes down to redistribution, reparations, and reciprocity.
Absolutely. Redistribution and reparations, that's what it's about. It's about understanding that we cannot continue the power dynamics as they are, that we've got to challenge them, and, you know, and to lift up all of our phenomenal leaders who have solutions, right? It's not only that you need to be in that space. Christy, you've got solutions of, like, what does the world look like? You're listening, you're bringing a lens, you have a collective kind of weight, right, that needs to be brought to bear in these spaces. So this is what we're saying, like, we cannot continue to have one segment of the population controlling everything for the planet. Women are 50% of the planet. We should be 50% of boards. People of color are 70% of the planet. We should be 70% of boards, regardless. But especially in the environmental sector that's supposed to be about the planet and its people, we must be reflected in those spaces, right? It is the only way for organizations to achieve their goal. The only way.
Talking about how do we shift the system, and I think something that's also been on my mind is like what do you feel from, like, a spiritual lens on your end, because I feel like you have a spiritual vibe and I also have a spiritual vibe.
Yes.
Like, I feel like in some ways the climate crisis is a moral and spiritual crisis as well, of people feeling so disconnected from maybe their own humanity or connection to these issues because they don't want to address it. I'm just wondering, like, your thoughts on that. Like, I think it's something I've struggled with, of, like, changing hearts and minds and being able to inspire people to act and to shift. I'm just wondering your own journey with that.
Yeah. No, I believe we've got to think about the world in a different way. So we've been part of a system, and remember, this is a system that started out steeped in exploitation of human labor, slavery, exploitation, right? It's like seeing resources and rendering people invisible. And we've got to acknowledge that that's an economic system that has destroyed people, destroyed lives, community, and destroyed the planet. And we've got to restructure who we are and how we are with each other. We're not, I believe we're meant to be linked to nature, to the world around us, in a way for us ourselves to be whole and to heal ourselves. So I learned from my great grandmother, who was an herbalist and midwife, and really I think brought a lot of spirituality to the world. I think how she organized her life and the lives of those around her, it's powerful, right? Because it's putting human needs first. Not thinking about wants and objects and things that you accumulate, that stuff, right? That's literally destroying our planet and our lives. So it's putting human beings first. It's centering us as a people. and it's learning from those who came before us, who had a real close connection. When my grandmother had a child, she planted a tree. She planted a coconut tree for each of the children. She had 9 children. Each of them had a tree. There was some spiritual link to nature and birthing in that process. And I think we've got to reclaim those spaces where we're centering our humanity and we're centering our love for ourselves and for those around us. So I believe a part of this journey has to be, touching people's hearts, has to be leading with the hugs. Yes, even in difficult pandemic times, right? Finding ways, especially because of these difficult pandemic times, that we're recognizing that as human beings in this, especially in this economic system that's stripping away our humanity, that we've got to center who we are, all of our multiple identities, and bring all of that with us to every space we're in. I think that's the only way to help us heal. We know we're in a situation where, especially in the environmental movement, there's so many people that are hurt, right? Our white supremacy, ethos in this world, not just this country but this world, is really it's leaving people wounded, and so we've got to be about centering love, centering well-being, centering self-care, all of that, right? As we center ourselves in nature, in healthy foods, in organic seeds, and thinking about things like seed sovereignty and ways that are going to not only help us heal now, but also help future generations to be healthy and whole.
Oh, that was incredible. Thank you so much.
Thank you for all that you bring and all that you do, and it's an honor, honestly, to kind of be in community with you.
I like having community with you. That's amazing. I wanted to know, what is your vision for the Green Leadership Trust? How do you feel what is your vision for how this work will expand, and maybe a vision to bring people who are listening to want to join in with the journey that you're on, in this new role that you hold?
Oh, thank you so much for that. The Green Leadership Trust, I think, is really on a path to change not just the environmental sector, but to stand as an example for other sectors, right? Again, our goal is 70% of boards. That should be a goal for all sectors, not just the environmental sector. But especially in the environmental sector, we need to do all that we can to make that goal a reality. Not yesterday, but today, right?
Yeah.
So I think it is critical for us, particularly to push forward. And, you kept talking about intergenerational spaces, right? I think the Green Leadership Trust has the opportunity, learning from the veterans that have been at this. Some of them are on 9 different boards. Diane, DDR, we call her, has been incredible because she literally has been on boards for the last 40 years.
Wow.
Is on 9 boards and shows us how it's done. She's almost always the chair. She chairs the board of the Center for Environmental Law, and it's so many, that she says, if you're going to do it right, and she does it, right? So Diane Dillon Ridgely is just one of our again, sheroes and Queen Mothers, and to think about her together with people like Danny Stigwald, who just wrote a book about activism, trying to help us save the planet, and a book for change makers. And she herself is young, dynamic, and has worked with young leaders at Power Shift. And so we've got this intergenerational vibe already there, where we're able to learn with each other, from each other, and across cultures. So I think my plea is that young leaders like you see themselves and their journeys and their vision and solutions as being a core part of what's needed for all these organizations to actually meet their goals. And so see yourself as a board member, and let's work together to get you on an environmental board if you're not already. If you're already a member of an environmental board, come and join us at the Green Leadership Trust. We'd be honored to have you join our collective force. And also, if you are thinking about joining a board and want to be on our board talent roster, we've got phenomenal leaders there as well. We don't call it a pipeline. No, we don't even like that term, but we think of it as our bench, right? People who are ready to roll with incredible dynamism. And we're working with organizations that are on the journey of equity. And so, we're honored to say, look, we've got leaders that are ready. If your board is serious about this journey for equity, diversity, belonging, inclusion, we're with you. And this is who we are. And so Black, Brown, AAPI, Indigenous leaders, join Green Leadership Trust. See us as part of your power. Right, and together, I believe we are going to change not just the environmental movement, but to show how it's done for other sectors as well. To have the type of solutions that come from our communities, the type of experiences, our lived experiences, that are then part of policies, that are then shaping where resources flow, that are helping organizations to be in step with where Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities are. We're the way to do it. So join us.
That was a pitch.
That's a pitch.
That was a pitch. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for your wisdom and sharing space with me today. Thank you for everyone who listened. This was recorded during Climate Week, New York City. So excited for the future of the Green Leadership Trust, my potential involvement, probably my most likely involvement.
Yes.
And continue these conversations of intergenerational collaboration, especially when it comes to promoting a livable future that represents all of our communities. So thank you so much for joining me, and
follow us. greenleadershiptrust.org is our website. Follow us on Twitter.
Perfect.
At GLT members. Follow us on LinkedIn.
Look at her.
Trust. Do I have everything covered?
She got the plug.
Instagram.
I know. I usually plug. Oh man, yes. I love it.
We'll get to TikTok. Chrissy will help us.
She'll get on TikTok soon. Oh my gosh. Thank you for plugging. Thank you everyone for listening to the Brown Girl Green podcast. This is Chrissy Drutman, where I interview environmental leaders and advocates about justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, as well as creative solutions to the climate crisis. You can listen to this podcast on YouTube or anywhere where you get your shows. Please subscribe, support, donate, and support the Green Leadership Trust. Join a board and get home safe.
Yes,
Thanks.
Stay strong.
Stay strong.
Yes.